and bearing. It was Marguerite then, not Queen Claude, who accompanied Francis to Rheims, and in January 1515, in the cathedral there, he was crowned King of France. In June that year, Francis was off over the Alps to that flashpoint that we've covered in previous episodes, with an all-powerful army to reclaim the Duchy of Milan. He spectacularly defeated a papal army of Swiss mercenaries and followed that up by giving the Pope a bloody stiff talking to, and so renegotiated the terms of his kingdom's relationship with the papacy. They confirmed the agreement in the Concordat of Bologna, sealed in 1516. In a significant submission by the Pope, Francis was permitted to appoint his own senior clergy. Yes, the Pope could reject his submission and Francis would have to find a substitution, but the substitution was of Francis's choice, and Francis's choice only. It was Marguerite, however, who was the real driving force behind the reform movement in France. To a large extent, she founded it. With a change in the rules for the provision of senior clergy, Marguerite held much sway in the appointments, including the new Bishop of Meaux, William Brunetet. One of Marguerite's literary works was a collection of short stories which were compiled into a book called the Heptameron. Within these short stories, she attacked the morality and ignorance of the clergy with quite some venom. Singled out to receive the wrath of her pen were bishops who flaunted their mistresses in public. Catholicism, of course, demanded bishops be celibate. She included priests in her book who fathered children and committed incest, abbots and indeed abbesses who sexually abused those in their charge, and the itinerant friars who raped and murdered as they travelled from place to place. Marguerite became a patron and protector of the so-called Circle of Meaux, an influential group of would-be religious reformists. This was a pretty radical group for its time, which is why I refer to her as a protector. And there were many in the conservative French church who would have gleefully seen the organisation disbanded and its adherents punished, probably for heresy. But as the king's sister, Marguerite carried quite a lot of clout. A reformist she certainly was, but it's important to be clear that a break from Rome altogether, a rejection of papacy, would have barely crossed her mind. Indeed, it probably never did cross her mind. She had precious little respect for the Italian families who all too often provided a pope for Christendom. But a French separation from the papacy never ever made it onto her agenda. Like Erasmus and many Christians of the time, she recognised the problems within the church, and as we have seen, wrote about them in strong critical terms. She was an evangelist of the time and wholeheartedly supported the translation of the Bible into French. The Bible was the basis for teaching Christianity. For example, she helped to combat the medieval superstitions, which showed little respect for God. There were monastic abuses aplenty, but any notion of dissolving them, well, no such notion existed. They needed reforming, but reforming from within.